Cities are engines powered by the requirements of their inhabitants. The provision of housing, employment, transport, prosperity, and social well-being. They represent the most concentrated manifestation of services and infrastructure that civil engineers support, and present sophisticated challenges that require smart, innovative solutions.
I see as engineers are key to develop smart cities because everything within our cities and within our towns is influenced by a civil engineer. I'm a STEM ambassador, so I do a lot of outreach to schools. We show them a town layout and they have to guess all the things that engineers are involved with. The list is endless because we're involved with so many things, from getting your water, getting your power, electricity to your house, through to taking your wastewater away, your roads, the network, preventing flooding. Because we're at the heart of every city, we're the best people to be bringing forward smart cities. We work a lot with government, so we're able to influence the future policy, and we do lots of policy work, things like State of the Nation, where we're looking at the current state of the nation, looking at how things are going to change and looking to the future.
Civil engineering and infrastructure engineering are hugely important to society, and it's a very broad profession where lots of different people with different skills all come together to work together to provide the infrastructure systems that we need.
Civil engineering is involved to meet the needs of smart cities. For the past 200 years, we've been constantly changing and thinking about the future. So, for example, Joseph Balsaghetti, when he was designing London sewers, thought about the future growth of the city, upsize the sewers to make sure that it could take that increased capacity and increased population growth. And only now we're having to replace those sewers. So we've always been forward-looking.
This generation of engineers will not only be the providers of smart cities, they'll also be living in smart cities, they'll be delivering in smart cities, they'll be working in smart cities.
So smart cities need engineers to provide the technology, but also engineers who can understand how humans will behave.
With as many as 2/3 of young adults opting to live in high-density urban areas, city leaders face continued pressure to develop strategies to provide safety, hygiene, energy, homes and food for the ever-increasing number of people populating these relatively limited spaces. Is the answer smart cities? What does the term actually mean? And what does a smart city offer?
One of the big challenges of smart cities is we tend to forget that cities are about people, and a city is not an algorithm. We can't put in more numbers and expect more outputs because humans are complex and messy. And if we want to look at how we genuinely create smart cities, and I would consider smart meaning, innovative, people-focused, focus on the right outcomes, then we need to be intentionally focusing on the kinds of inputs that are going to drive that decision-making.
We have to think outside the box and break down the existing barriers to achieve cities designed to be centered around the mobility of people. This will increase economic activities, improve the quality of life, and change the lifestyle of the people.
City is about the people living there, and the smart city is a city which is responsive and they can live there at high quality.
Smart cities aren't just fancy technology, they're better designed cities. It's about implementing solutions that work for all.
What is the purpose of a smart city? And the purpose is to develop cities that are livable, where the well-being is at the forefront for the users of the smart cities. And on the other hand, all of these developments and all of these kind of solutions that we use within the smart cities are implemented in a way that they do not impact on the environment.
A smart city project must adapt to the specific parameters of a city's unique culture and identity. From country to country, the infrastructure, people, and most importantly, culture of each locale impact the definition of the term. From an engineering perspective, a smart city employs technology to maximize its effectiveness and, most importantly, to improve the lives of its citizens. Urban planning calls for approaches that can cope with urban complexity while allowing for participatory and collaborative processes to empower citizens, democratic cities, if you will. And the use of digital twins, virtual models designed to accurately reflect real-world examples, can help us to better understand complex, interconnected city systems. This will enable us to intervene more effectively by, for instance, better visualizing the co-benefits of integrated solutions.
The realm of urban analytics is an emerging knowledge field that focuses on creating digital twins of cities and urban environments in order to be able to evaluate them in a quantitative, analytical way, to extract lessons that would help inform urban design, architectural design, civil engineering design, economic development, mobility and logistics decision-making processes.
In 1991, David Gellertner published a book called Mirror Worlds. Today you could argue that that phrase would be digital twins. And he said, to paraphrase, that we would see the world more vividly and deeply. It would be a great humanistic advance, and we would gain control over the world through insight and vision. If you consider our world today and consider our finite resources, climate change, need for global circular economies, we need this 30-year-old prediction to come true. And digital twins and smart cities is one part of the vision. The other part, of course, is based on the actions we take once we have these new levels of insight.
We're obviously building cities for real people, and this requires real solutions to real problems. And in order to actually understand what solutions fit best and what problems we actually have, we can use digital twins as a foundation for this. With this interconnectivity, I think that this is exactly where GIS comes into play, because what GIS is this integrated, interconnected approach. All of that provides the foundation for digital twins, which provides foundations for smart cities. Using geography, geolocation, and everything, all these technological components coming together to form, I'm going to say, the cities of not just the future, but like the next generation moving forward. GIS stands for Geographic Information System. And basically what that is a framework bringing together all different types of data in the form of different types of layers. That could be traffic data, weather data, location-based data. And so all of that comes together in GIS, and then using the tools that we have, we can visualize this data. So it becomes more than just numbers.
My key message always is start with the foundational bricks, start with the foundational layers. Just think about your policies, your data standards, how is this all going to talk to each other? You can connect it all up, but if the system doesn't understand what the other system's saying, it can get quite costly quite quickly. Actually spending the time up front to plan it properly, to understand the foundational pieces and then go from there will just set you up for success.
What we will be able to do is to understand much better how these different types of urban development and architectural design features impact our individual and global psychology in terms of inducing certain behavior and impacting the quality of life of citizens. We're going to be much better equipped in order to tailor the decision-making processes for urban design and economic development to the needs of every urban environment.
The more we know about our built environments and how it performs, whether that be through its daily use, energy consumption, pollution, carbon emissions, the more we can change it for the better.
In the next 5 years, we will have been able to demonstrate the importance of digital technology applied in the construction sector and specifically in the water industry. Then we will have been able to prove the relevance of digital twins and digital technology in the solutions that we are implementing in the water sector. The challenges for the water industry are discharge and pollution events, program affordability in terms of the water sector, and buildability issues from the construction point of view. Then we have different players and some objectives that need to be achieved to deliver the water quality in terms of water treatment for drinking water and wastewater when we discharge to the environment. We need to work together to make sure that the solutions that we implement are the right ones. The solution needs to be cost-effective, the solution needs to have the minimum impact on the environment, and they need to be affordable.
We're trying to improve the way in which we monitor our waterways, our rivers, our lakes and our coastlines. We're looking to reduce the risk of overflows by using clever control technologies to improve the way that water moves through our sewer networks. And we're also looking to use digital technology to understand how the wastewater treatment process works so we can reduce emissions, optimize energy use, and all do that while reducing cost to the consumer.
Engineers will be key in determining which are the right innovative solutions to be implemented to achieve the objectives that we are all considering for the future in terms of water quality, water scarcity, and our impact on the environment.
Imagine a world where you have digital twins across a local authority's educational estates, monitoring classroom uses, movement within corridors, energy consumption, carbon capture, etc. Through aggregating this data and by using generative design and machine learning, automated and optimised designs for new schools could be produced. Latest regulations and building controls checked and approved in real time. Cost estimates automated.
The insights that we could get from a smart building when it's linked to education is something that I think is untapped at the moment. We need to create an environment which is the best place for our children to learn. If we think about some of our own experience of going to school where you're sitting in a classroom, it's either too dark, too light, too hot, too cold, different environmental conditions that actually, when you think about it, make it really hard to focus and learn. But if we could get insights from a smart building that actually controlled the environment in its optimal standard, based on different levels of number of pupils, different weather conditions, and we made that environment the best environment to learn, the insights we could get from it actually could potentially ensure that we have students that have got better grades, more ability to kind of take on different capacity. If we can link all of that together through a smart building, then I think we've got something that's really powerful. But the environment would need to benefit from the insights.
This is not a doomsday prediction. The potential is amazing, but designers will need to embrace these new tools and understand today's conversations around AI is just the start of the real digital transformation. As a society, we are only just seeing the start of the potential, but it is advancing quickly and getting quicker all the time.
Our cities are facing massive challenges, so climate change, globalization, urbanization, all of these things that are really affecting how our cities are being shaped. And so for me, a smart city is all about an interconnected, data-driven approach to city planning.
Urban residents are usually aware of the issues that their cities face and often have a good sense of how these can be addressed. What they require from technologists are solutions to the problems that they identify. Urban data platforms, or UDPs, are helping smart cities evolve by assisting in this regard. Sourcing information from public entities, private enterprises, NGOs, and private citizens, UDPs help provide data-driven solutions that benefit all, improving urban services by using data about the city and its inhabitants to better understand their needs and demands.
Planners usually have a lot of this tangible information they are using, but this kind of intangible information they are oftentimes missing. And it's extremely valuable when you think that you are really designing the future places for the people to integrate into the process also people's points and ideas of the environment.
The goal of an urban data platform is to provide a comprehensive and reliable source of cross-domain data to support evidence-based decision-making and planning for the entirety of urban development. It is a digital infrastructure that collects and harmonizes data from various sources to create a single point of truth.
The innovation lies in the fact that we are collecting GIS data that is about people's perceptions, experiences, thoughts, ideas. It is that kind of information that you cannot get from any other source.
This data accumulates geospatial information, and that is actually then that kind of format that planners can also easily use as part of their work.
Citizen trust ensures that citizens are willing to share their data and participate in the development of smart city initiatives. Trust promotes transparency and accountability, protects citizens' privacy, and fosters collaboration between city planners, citizens, and other stakeholders in the creation of smart and sustainable cities. In order to maintain this trust, it is essential to be transparent with exactly what is collected and exactly how it is used.
An actual smart city should see the stakeholder engagement as an integrated part of its processes. When people understand what the things are about, they have their say in early phases of the planning processes and are informed about how their thoughts have been incorporated. I believe that increases the buy-in.
UDPs offer insights into mobility patterns and help optimize transportation systems to meet the needs of individual users and promote sustainable transportation options. These GDPs can improve future urban mobility by providing real-time monitoring, predictive intelligence, and improved safety. Predictive maintenance of urban infrastructure can increase the overall satisfaction with transport offered services.
A low-carbon mobility strategy is a fundamental precondition for making cities smart and sustainable for generations to come. What implications does this have for mobility infrastructure? And how should the transport industry be thinking about infrastructure going forward?
At the moment, we're over-consuming the resources we've got. For example, transport. So 1/4 of the world's carbon footprint is related to transport. So we need to be using our infrastructure more sensibly and more smartly.
In smart cities is where most of the people live, so it's where most of the energy is consumed, where most of the pollution and gas emission is done. In order to reverse that process, we have to adopt another kind of mobility, a cleanest one. At this moment is electric mobility. For people that own EV, electric vehicles, they have to rely on the infrastructure. They have to be sure that if they go from point A to B, they will have a charging station to charge their vehicle.
It's critical to provide confidence on EV drivers to adopt electric mobility. The reliability of the products, the reliability and the confidence on the charging infrastructure, it's fundamental to encourage the drivers on the electric mobility adoption.
User design center is the most important thing in these kinds of solutions. If people get a good experience, it will be easier to use it again. Also, it will be easier to do a kind of mass adoption of this kind of equipment.
To support the sustainability of all the mobility sectors, we need to incorporate all the different stakeholders, from the members from the industry, the regulators, and also the governments. This is very important because without the framing where you can use this technology, where you can bring it into the field, to the customers' infrastructure, to the cars, it will be very hard to do. Vehicle grid can have a very positive impact on feeding the energy from the battery of vehicles back to the grid, because there is also fluctuating of renewable energies availability, and also the loads can be vary over the day. There is a big need of supporting the grid to have no shortage and always have the energy available, and that's also bringing the grid to a high efficiency level, because there you can feed even more energy over the day through the same grid lines you have.
It's time to establish the necessary infrastructure on a broad scale, and so our target within CharIN is to do it in every area of the world, as well in Asia, in North America and in Europe.
It's very important to bring the solutions in a way that everyone can participate. Different parts of the value chain have a completely different industry, and they have to work together, aligning solutions, aligning the interfaces, and also we need global interaction. We need cooperation globally. We have seen with such collaboration of our members for the truck and bus electrification coming together, organizing them in a way that they have then been defined under the CharIN umbrella specification for megawatt charging system. This charging system enables also to bring the long-haul trucks and buses to the electrification and bring them also to a CO2 neutral solution.
Norway is a forerunner in reducing the carbon footprint. Almost all new buses are fully electric. Public transport authorities are driving a very innovative agenda in respect to passenger experience.
When we start running the operation with the electrical buses, both the passenger and the driver should expect higher quality, especially related to the noise. Since we are the operator in the Nordic country, we are ready to handle rapid change in the weather. This change in weather also influences on the consumption for the energy for the electrical buses. To deliver sustainability and profitable operation, then we need to have the data from the buses, from the charging system, and from the whole entire ecosystem.
The smart cities approach to housing and architecture employs innovative solutions to provide citizens with comfort and safety while reconnecting them with nature. Smart and sustainable practices are applied to buildings and infrastructure, transforming the cityscape completely into a greener, more attractive habitat. Such buildings are constructed with the capacity to adapt to the specific requirements of their occupants, resulting in a positive impact on their physical and mental health.
Nature has a basic component of architecture, so it's a kind of new vision about the relation between nature and buildings. What inspired me was the dream and at the same time the attempt to put together living nature and architecture, but with a different approach that means not using nature only as a decoration or as a kind of ornamental presence. So what we have done, what we do, what we will do is to really create ecosystems where we have thousands of plants, hundreds of humans, many birds, where the different species are cohabiting. When we work with this idea to make buildings greener, we are not simply involved in projects that are realizing green vertical facades. We have developed many projects where the roofs become space for all the tenants. The idea that these spaces will play the same role that courtyards were used to play in European cities for centuries. So places where people could meet, could develop, let's say, cultural experiences. It's a kind of common places. To do that, the presence of plants, the presence of trees is a necessity. And that's why we are, let's say, extremely interested to develop this idea of green roofs. Not simply in terms of a green surface, but in terms of place for collective interaction.
Architecture and urban planning form the foundations of smart city strategic thinking. Public spaces which fill urban intervals with life are directly associated with the construction of what we call a city and influence a user's relationship to and interactions within them. The quality of these spaces informs our impressions of a city, so good planning should be the rule, not the exception.
In Roman times, the forum was important. In the last century, the main square, where people were gathering and not only doing the market or this kind of stuff, but they were talking to each other. They were knowing each other. The cities were growing as an urbanization is a strong trend, and we forget for certain decades to form these spaces. A big city cannot have one main square, but local centers has to be formed and sub-centers. That's a place where the people living there can gather there and talk to each other. All these things are essential needs for people to discuss it day by day. That is living.
We as architects and engineers, we create public spaces, gathering spaces for humans in such a way that we can create shelter and protection and an environment that gives the possibility of gathering and enjoying music and social exchange, but then it should fall into the background if you have a different season.
The way we design our streets and public spaces is evolving to address the challenges of our future needs. In the past, our cities were planned predominantly around the growth and efficient movement of private cars and motor vehicles, which demanded more and more road space and capacity for motor traffic, with inevitable impacts on the environment and how our cities functioned as places. People living and working in our towns and cities expect and deserve better. We need to tackle the climate emergency and achieve both the government's and Mayor of London's carbon neutral targets. We need to achieve Vision Zero targets for making our roads safer and more accessible for people of all ages and abilities. Smart cities provide a fantastic opportunity to rethink how our towns and cities operate, to prioritise active travel modes of walking, wheeling, cycling and public transport, to improve air quality and reallocate space to create healthier and more enjoyable public spaces that improve people's quality of life.
Population is generally increasing. It's important to really understand how is the city actually today working with this impact, and where do we find possibilities to enhance this whole experience.
But I would expect that in the next decades, people will be more cooperative, not only with us, but with each other also. We are engineers, but we are interfacing with humans on this area. We have to be sensible, we have to be cooperative with our stakeholders also and the local inhabitants, because it's a good exercise if we have a chance to form an area together. Then this is something where we are discussing our demands, we can make compromises, and we can learn how to live together.
The construction sector and the built environment contributes anywhere up to 36% of final energy consumption. 40% of global direct and indirect carbon emissions come from construction in the built environment. Therefore, we have to get it right. You know, we can make significant changes within our built environment in terms of reducing the amount of carbon emissions. And it's the future engineers and architects that we're training that can actually deliver that through the knowledge that they gain in terms of the delivery of a sustainable built environment.
To make it sustainable is not a decision, it's a must. And in the 3 dimensions, in society-wise, that we have to live, in economic terms, that we have to have jobs, we have to have a chance to live in a good condition, and of course in environmental terms, use of energy, use of resources which can be sustainable.
Smart cities work towards an energy future in which the integration of combined technologies using renewable energy sources reduces their environmental impact and offers citizens a better quality of life. Geothermal technology has a particularly important role to play in smart electricity and thermal grids, as it can deliver heating and cooling solutions as well as electricity without the high energy consumption costs associated with fossil fuels.
So if we look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and how they've set out the markers on how we want to develop and how we want to bring about our future communities, those different checkpoints offers it's almost like the guardrails of what we need to do to develop our future cities. So when we're talking about creating affordable and clean energy, GeoExchange is a great solution for that.
GeoExchange, also referred to as ground source heat pumps. It's a solution that combines mechanical systems with infrastructure. So rather than looking for energy somewhere else in a country that's transported to your site, you're actually tapping into the abundant energy of the earth below the footprint of your building or adjacent to it. That infrastructure is a piping network that typically connects to a heat pump. Generally, what a heat pump does is just extracts energy from one place, increases its intensity to make it usable, and then pushes it into a facility for heating applications. And what's exciting about this technology is it's also dual purpose. So you can do that for heating, and you can also provide inherently as a benefit cooling to facilities.
High-density areas inevitably produce large amounts of waste. Smart waste management harnesses innovative technology to help deal with this by, for instance, employing cutting-edge recycling techniques and optimizing collection methods, or by converting waste materials into low-carbon energy.
The key to creating sustainable waste infrastructure in a smart city will be connective technology, such as digital platforms, AI and the Internet of Things. Bin sensors will give us real-time data in terms of how much material is in the bin. We'll be able to use this information to optimize our collection routes, potentially move to a just-in-time service, and also it could help us support our EV vehicle transition. While more and more waste will be reused and recycled in a smart city, there'll be some material where this just isn't possible. Ideally, in a smart city, this would be turned into energy via a process called an energy recovery facility, an ERF. ERFs take residual waste, turn it into electricity, which is then used to power local businesses and homes. In addition, any heat which is generated through that process could be used to provide district heating, and any CO2 which is generated could be captured and even used by local businesses. If all ERFs in the UK currently captured their CO2, it would reduce CO2 emissions within the waste industry by 15%. Although energy recovery facilities are not as sustainable as other power sources, such as renewable, solar and wind, it does provide a disposal solution for a difficult to treat waste. Equally, any food waste that is collected could be sent to a local anaerobic digestion facility where it would be converted into biogas. This biogas could be further upgraded into electricity or into a low carbon fuel. Both of these solutions would make a smart city carbon neutral, but also improve its energy security.
So future smart city infrastructure needs to be built upon the principles of the circular economy, using technology to connect people, communities and businesses, enable the movement, exchange and transformation of material and goods locally, and ultimately create self-sufficient communities. But most importantly, it needs to change behaviours.
The need to cut emissions calls for a reduction in the distances that people and resources, such as food, should be required to travel. As global food demand increases and climate change impacts agriculture, How can we provide food security to smart city residents? Urban agriculture and vertical farming may offer a solution. It is still early days, but such solutions continue to evolve alongside the related technology, and higher demand will help reduce costs and stimulate innovation.
Closed-loop system farming is a process that's part of the circular economy. It's where you match up systems, where the inputs match outputs of other systems, and those outputs from that systems match into the inputs of others. We try to design efficient systems that the waste streams are useful resources. For example, we try to convert electricity, carbon dioxide, water, and nitrogen into an entire food chain system of salads and vegetables and proteins and sustainable fuels and fertilizers. These products at the end of the process become very useful and necessary. And we need these types of technologies because the world has developed and built up our industrial system with massive waste streams, with massive amounts of pollution, and we don't need to. We have the technologies that are available today. It's really about identifying smart capital. It's really about designing projects with that sustainability lens, with that closed-loop system and circular economy system at the forefront of the design process.
Aquaponics system is combination of fish farming and hydroponically growing vegetables. The fish provides fertilizers for plants, and plants cleans the water for fish. It can make food production more friendly with environments and also reduce our carbon dioxide footprints. Fish farm producing CO2, and the plants need CO2 to grow, so we are using this CO2 from fish to feed our plants, and this is the second closed loop. I think the last definition of closed loop is that you produce zero waste. We are using the roots of our plants to feed the insect, and these insects can be used like a fish food in our fish farm. Our goal is to make food production for every single citizen of the smart city. There is places on the planet where you can grow nothing, but if you use this method, you can grow food. Also, NASA and ESA both are working with aquaponics if they thinking about living outside the earth. So that's the proof that you cannot bring oil or fertilizers with you because it's always infinite source. But this kind of food production is infinite.
Ensuring people's safety is a core principle of smart city thinking. Digital crime is on the rise, but that doesn't mean the days of physical crime are over. What are the relevant agencies doing to keep up with criminal activity? And what will policing look like in years to come?
Police have access to historical records, and based on those historical reported crimes, predictive policing is using statistical models to forecast people and places at high risk of future victimization. So if you've been previously victimized, you have a higher probability of being victimized in the future. Another common finding in criminology is that a small number of places, these hotspots of crime, tend to disproportionately contribute to the majority of crime in a city. So a common response by police departments are to do targeted interventions at those hotspots of crime to try to prevent crime in the future. For officers, or have more fluid areas that simultaneously make it so you can meet different demands in different areas over time in a more efficient manner. And so those are examples of using algorithms to help make police more efficient. If we're talking more broadly about advances in technology, just having a cell phone makes us personally more productive, and advances in software and technology like that will simultaneously make police more productive as well. So instead of having to physically write a report and then turn that in at the end of the day, and then that gets digitized by a second person, people can make smarter forms that make it easier for police officers to to fill out incident reports. And so technology in that way as well can make police more efficient and faster at their jobs.
More cities need to consider the needs of females, to be more friendly, find safer spaces, thinking about personal surveillance and comfort in preference to things being attractive.
So historically, most cities around the world typically have been designed by men, and most aren't inclusive of women in those ways. Cities are very gendered spaces. The way that men and women or female identifying people would experience the city is very different. Some of the top 10 most livable cities in the world, 1/3 of women don't feel safe in public spaces, even in those, really highly livable cities. And it's not just a matter of putting in more cameras and lights. There's many other strategies that would make it feel safe and inclusive. I mean, one is, age-old principles of having eyes on the street. So rather than just having lights and cameras, actually think about having active frontages. They feel much more safe, more people walking. Often more activity is actually safer than less activity in that way.
The approach to smart cities that young people come up with is very orientated around their needs, which aren't being met by where they live at present. So for example, I was working with a group and they identified the need in their local town was there's nothing for them to do. A lot of our towns lack infrastructure for young people who can't drive or can't afford to drive, can't drink and go to the pub. So they identified the need for a place to hang out. It also surprises me what they think the solution is to the issues, that they're much more likely to say, well, why don't we walk? Why do we need to drive? And it's been shown that children enjoy being able to walk with their parents' places because they can interact with them, they can interact with the environment and point stuff out. So this idea of a child-centred city is very important. So things like school streets often work very well where you get the school on board. A lot of children aren't necessarily wedded to being driven everywhere. It's the parent that drives them.
Often if we're thinking about creating places for young people, we'll do something like build a skate park, but actually a lot of people just want somewhere to sit and hang out with their friends that feels like it's theirs, like it can be personalised. And so if we don't actually have diverse voices making the decisions about cities, we overlook a lot of those issues on the ground.
Connected systems for urban areas can provide a great many benefits for citizens around the world.
The smart cities of the future potentially are more vulnerable than the traditional cities that have lower levels of connectivity. And what that means is that we need to develop the solutions that enable very rapid response solutions to be there when the disaster strikes, that enables all the systems that are in place to continue functioning, but at the same time that enables people to continue being connected. So one of the solutions centers around the use of autonomous drones in order to achieve connectivity wherever you are.
So we can use these drones to fly to an area where the connectivity is damaged or limited to we offer solutions or the services to the ground users when there is a disaster or when there is a natural disaster. You can think of these drones as a flying base stations or flying Wi-Fi spots, and they can go there and provide the connectivity to the users. And these users can then use their mobile phones to let their friends and family know that they're fine and they're doing well in case of any flooding or any earthquake.
We cannot neglect the fact that actually people live and will live within the city limits as well as outside of the city limits, and therefore connectivity is required everywhere.
In some of these countries where they're really starting to build connectivity out, then actually to start to sort of make that connectivity, build it almost smart from the beginning makes real sense. Suddenly, in areas where there's been absolutely no connection whatsoever, they definitely don't have fixed, and generally they won't have any kind of mobile connectivity. Suddenly, they've got connection. People often work quite a long way from where they're living, so safety is a big thing. In Africa, 50% of people don't have any kind of banking. So once you bring mobile to an area, then you can bring financial services, you can bring telemedicine to areas, and you can bring education. So all things that we would take very much for granted, but actually can make a huge difference to these local villages.
By connecting schools, hospitals and government buildings, it's changing people's lives. It's helping them to not travel for hours and hours on end, and they can get connectivity at the drop of a hat.
The success of these systems relies on a unified approach from government, the private sector, and a city's residents themselves. However, with the correct support and infrastructure, smart cities can foster joined-up living solutions for the world's growing urban citizenry.
Without collaboration between the different disciplines, there is no way you can create a usable smart city between the stakeholders at the city level, stakeholders at the micro level, so communities, the stakeholders between the cities, between the governments, local authorities, with the governments and so on. And that requires a lot more integrated approach, a lot more collaboration that enables sustainable development, sustainable growth, and all for the purpose of maintaining our environment intact and at the same time enabling the inhabitants of those cities to have the best well-being that they can possibly have.
Even though everybody gets hung up around the technology and the sensors, it's about leaving a legacy and a sustainable future, not just for the future generations, but when you think about carbon, CO2, pollution, vehicles and everything else, how can we solve some of those problems by just taking that data and being a bit smarter about it? If we carry on the way we are today, we will never hit the targets we've set ourselves from a sustainable city perspective. So for me, it's about leaving a future for the future generations, our families, our children.
The IC's vision for the future is really embodied in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and we work very hard to try and support the delivery of those. So for example, they want to reduce poverty, they want to ensure that people have good access to public water supply and clean water, that they have good transport links. We need to deliver all those SDGs in a way that helps people and the planet to thrive. And we need to be very careful in the delivery of those that we don't take our focus off people and planet. People in terms of improving our economy and making sure that people's lives are better, but also that we can't do that in a way that compromises good environmental standards or the sustainability of our planet.